Today we're going to understand that we need to be full stack.
Yes, indeed, we are going to.
Okay, how many of us are full stack developers? Do we have? Okay, do we have a front end, back end? So it's good. Okay, good.
It's like 50-50. Looks good.
It's going to be interesting conversation. Let's say it like that.
Yes, I do hope so.
Okay, good. So the stage is yours. If you will have questions, we are welcoming you to put them online. I will try to read them. If you would like to give a question just here, let's use this stage. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for introducing me. Yeah, so first of all, hello Vilnius, hello everyone watching us online, and yeah, thank you very much for having me. And I think it's been already 2.5 days of this conference, of this very good conference, and your brains might be a bit tired of taking some tech stuff in, you know, because there's a certain capacity that you fill up and then you need time to process it. This is why this talk is not gonna exercise your cognitive abilities too much. This is gonna be a bit more like applied philosophy. So, and indeed, we're gonna be talking about being full stack. Why I, in general, actually came up with the topic was because I have participated in various arguments about the topic, like whether being full stack is cool or uncool, why, and so on and so forth. And I just decided to make some sort of a stance to clear things up, to set the record straight, so to say, hopefully. And today I'm going to talk why everyone should be full stack and build stuff. Actually, my message plays really well with the name and the idea of the conference. So, but first, just a little bit about myself. My name is Anton. I work as an engineer manager at Westwing, Germany. We're, by the way, hiring, so go to the westwing.de/career, figure out what position suits you, and please apply. But now I'm going to shut up about this. As you may have figured, I am a full-stack engineer. I have worked on backend, on frontend, and on DevOps. I'm still focusing more on DevOps. During the time, I get to focus on everything, on anything besides management. But yeah, so I have tried many things in terms of tech. And outside of work, I am a father, a hobby science fiction writer in Russian. Unluckily, or rather luckily, nothing has been translated to English, so you're not going to cringe reading what I wrote, unless you understand Russian. And I'm a big fan of mountain skiing and hiking, and if you want to connect with me, talk with about anything of that, here's my Twitter handle. You can write me an email. This is this, and you can add me on LinkedIn. I'm super happy to do that. But enough intro, let's get right into it. Everyone should be full stack. What, you may be asking? Like everyone. The everyone word is a bit of a generalization there, isn't it? And generalizations are insensitive to edge cases, even if they are generally right. So this is a bit of a clickbait message, so to say. And nevertheless, I stand by it. And obviously, in the next half an hour, we're going to get more into why so. But to start on the topic, let's first look at some quotes. The first one is going to be, and I'm going to read it out because I don't remember them by heart. "The shoemaker makes a good shoe because he makes nothing else," said Ralph Waldo Emerson, a 19th century philosopher from the United States. The next one, "God and the devil are an effort after specialization and division of labor." This is by Samuel Butler, a British novelist from the 19th century as well. This one is my favorite. "Each man is capable of doing one thing well. If he attempts several, he will fail to achieve distinction in any." And this is by a guy whom you may have heard of. His name was Plato. in case you haven't heard of this guy, he was a philosopher in ancient Greece 2.5 centuries ago, millennia ago, 3,500 years ago. And obviously, yeah, the infamous no, let's ask DevOps, backend, frontend folks to do it, said almost any software engineer in the 21st century. All those quotes, except the last one, are the quotes of rather famous, very smart people, so they must be right. However, whilst I agree that they may apply on, let's say, a country or rather a company level, when we go down to the individual level, I disagree. And the quote that I like better would be this one. In an age of specialization, people are proud to be able to do one thing well. But if that is all they know about, they're missing out on much else life has to offer. And this is by Dennis Flanagan, the founding editor of the Scientific American magazine. So, to look into why so, I would like to start with a very brief history of specialization as a thing. So, as you may have noticed, specialization is rather ancient, at least as ancient as Plato, but actually more ancient. And that is so because in the ancient times, by the way, these tools are not that ancient. I haven't found a picture of really ancient tools. But in those ancient times, several thousand years ago, specialization actually made a lot of sense on the individual level because the learning possibilities were rather scarce. I wouldn't say the only, but the major source of learning would be your father or your mother, and the same would apply for them themselves, so they would learn from their father or their mother. And moreover, the process of learning was rather imperfect, not so productive. The process of doing the thing you learned was also not so productive, so you had to really learn a lot of quirks of the profession and so on to be any productive. And on top of that, the lifespans of people were on average rather a lot shorter. And that is why it was hard to achieve distinction in two things, because you just merely didn't have the lifespan to do so, unfortunately. Nevertheless, on the country or rather kingdom level, if you will, specialization didn't make so much sense. They had to full stack because the trade possibilities weren't so developed. The technology wasn't developed enough to do trade for everyone to do trade. So some most successful countries were able to do some trade, but still there was nothing in comparison with what came later. That is why, just to merely fulfill the needs of their people, they had to full stack, had to consider the resources they had and what they could produce out of this to get by. Then, fast forward a couple of thousand years, the technology that enabled trade developed a lot. The trade has become a thing, like a big thing, everywhere in some parts of the world, let's put it like that. And trade was enabling prosperity and so on and so forth. So specialization started to become a thing on the country and the kingdom level as well, unless you weren't at war with your neighbors or with your trade partners, obviously, which was relatively often happening, but still. However, on the individual level, nothing changed, really. Almost nothing changed. So there were some universities appearing, but still were like, they were available, first of all, to the elite of the elite. So it's not something that everyone could, or a considerable amount of people could expect to get to. But even though even if you could actually go to the university of that time, it wouldn't give you much of possibilities to full stack. You would rather pick one direction, which involved some, let's say, a broad range of subjects, which you would then pick one from and specialize. And all that approach, let's say, actually survived for much longer and was carried through by the humanity, carried through almost all the subsequent centuries, and made it to the 20th century, and still was there, even in the post-industrial world and so on, all the way until sometime in the 80s, when internet came to be. So, internet, so it took a couple of decades for it to pick up properly. Then some tools appeared, like search engines, like, I don't know, websites like Wikipedia and so on and so forth. And with that, many people who had access to internet, there were not so many people who actually had access to internet directly, but still quite many people in the world were able to access a vast chunk of the knowledge of humanity that was kind of digitalized, so to say. And excuse me, sorry, thank you. So, and in the last decade, we got blessed with even more. And what I mean is EdTech. So we got blessed with lots and lots of resources available on the internet, with lots and lots of learning content, and that especially is well suited for us, software engineers. But not only. I mean, I didn't put YouTube here, but YouTube is a source of knowledge and skills and learning opportunities in many, many, many things. So, yeah, and all that variety poses now the big question. Do we, modern software engineers, let's focus on the software engineer field, still need to be experts in just one thing, really? And to look into this big question a little bit better, to get a bit more detail for this, let's take a few example situations. Situation number one. Let's imagine you are a good backend engineer, a really true expert backend engineer, but only in the backend domain, nothing else. You work in a team, as we normally do, which has only one front-end engineer, and this front-end engineer needs to take vacations sometimes. And this time, they're on vacation for 2 more weeks. And unfortunately, you come to need an anticipated small front-end change for the feature you're working on now. So you expect it to be backend only, but it isn't. And you obviously have no idea how to implement it. You're blocked. What to do? Not so many options. Not so many. The first one would be just pause the feature for 2 weeks. That's quite feasible most of the time. So you would come to a manager, say, yeah, I can proceed, give me some backend ticket, and this one will have to sit there and wait till our front-end engineer is back from vacation. Very simple. Sometimes, though, you cannot afford to do so. So that means that your feature has high priority. So this may enable you to go to another team where they have a front-end engineer not on vacation and ask that front-end engineer to help you out. And I would argue that both of these options are quite disruptive. The first one is very disruptive for your delivery pipeline, so to say, for your development process, because you're blocked. Your team needs to suddenly reprioritize, groom some more tickets probably for you, and so on and so forth. And most importantly, the business value delivery is postponed by 2 weeks. And arguably, this is exactly what pays our salaries. So if we postpone the business value delivery for 2 weeks, hopefully we don't postpone our salaries for 2 weeks with that. So the second option is disruptive for someone else's delivery pipeline, but not only, also for yours, because this front-end engineer who will come to your team will probably need to spend some time getting into the context. So they haven't worked with your application, very likely. You don't have ideal documentation, very likely. So it's going to take some time. Then they will implement something, not in an optimal way, because they don't know what's the optimal way. They just need to make it probably quick and dirty. So you will need a follow-up piece of effort spent on the same thing. Let's get to the situation number 2. Let's say you're a front-end engineer and only front-end, and you have a very good idea for improving the conversion of the app you're building. So you have a more or less business idea. This is great. However, like many business ideas, this idea's worth needs to be proven. So for that, normally you would build something like a proof of concept, so a POC. And in your case, unfortunately, it involves backend and DevOps, which you don't have an idea about. And all your backend DevOps colleagues are busy with their agendas as they normally should be in a healthy team, right? So what to do? There are more options there, but I would point out two main options. One would be you persuade this backend and DevOps engineer of your choice to build with you after work for beer or for whatever currency they accept, which is, again, a bit disruptive for your idea pipeline, because ideas, let's say, ideas are better processed fresh. Otherwise, they fade, and you stop actually remembering all those nitty-gritty details, and in the worst case scenario, you will just lose the idea and lose the passion that backs it up. So hopefully you don't lose it, but there's still some cost to it, because you will need to spend some overhead on facilitation there. So you would do some project management there, which is a healthy thing to do for an engineer, I'm convinced. However, still, that's extra effort, and for a smallish POC, maybe that's not the extra effort you want to put in. So, yeah. Another option would be get rid of the dependencies. You abstract all the needed changes away, you stop them with something that would imitate some backend or DevOps work on the background, and you pretend they will work once you implement them properly, which is an option. However, still it brings the value of your POC down. Why? Because POCs are good for two purposes. One is actually proving that your idea works, and two is removing a bit of the uncertainty of how much effort it's going to take when you prove that the idea works and you get to implement it. So here, you have no additional idea about the backend and DevOps area, so the uncertainty is still there, the major part of the uncertainty. So again, a bit disruptive here and there. And then the situation number 3. Let's say you're, again, a backend engineer, true backend, and you grow, and you get to lead a cross-functional team, which Agile loves cross-functional teams, so arguably the majority of teams are cross-functional, or should be. Let's not get into that argument. We have another argument to hold. So yeah, you get to lead a cross-functional team, which inherently means that you have various functions there. Not only backend, that you know, but also frontend, also QA, also maybe DevOps, and you cannot quite understand what's going on in those areas of your team. And as a team lead, you are responsible for the output of those areas, and you still need to make sure that everything is done well there, or good enough. What to do? Well, by no means is this situation new to management, as a theory. Definitely there are options. And the majority of the options would span around, I would say, 1.5 things that you could start with. The first and the most important one would be because you don't understand anything, you would not even look at the how it's done there, but you look only at the what. So you spend considerably more time specifying the requirements, detailing them out, then you establish a whole lot of KPIs to look at those areas, to understand how those areas are doing, and you basically manage them as a black box, which is a bit risky. So yes, it is a must. You have to do it when you go up the management ladder to some higher levels where you cannot possibly learn all the domains that you need to be responsible for, because there are so many people that you're responsible for. So yeah, you will have to get to this eventually. But when you're when you're a team leader, you're direct manager, this is a bit risky. We're not going to get into the details as of why exactly it's risky, but you don't understand what's going on. You manage as a black box, but plus you've just been promoted to the team leader, so you're going to have much more stuff than just these requirements and KPIs to take care of. So how to mitigate this? You can do the obvious thing. You would then replace all non-senior team members with senior engineers, and that will make you more sure that everything in those areas is done well, right? Well, I would argue this is not a very good option. So if you come to your manager with such a suggestion, can I replace all non-senior team members in my team with senior guys? Chances are that your manager will consider replacing you instead. Why so? Two main considerations from my side. There are more probably, but two main considerations. One is this inevitable budget consideration. This is much more expensive, and if the reason is because you don't know some stuff and you don't want to learn, then that's arguably not a good enough reason. But most importantly, this is really not nice in so many ways, not even on this emotional level that you basically would come to the guys and say, okay, I'm going to transfer you to another team, or even worse, I'm going to need to let you go because you're not senior and I don't understand your area. How does that sound at all? Not even that, like even on this kind of a parameter level, so the team cohesion will be broken, the team synergy will be broken, then basically the team output will be broken for quite some time once you get this all running in the new setup. So not good at all. And by the way, if you consider being promoted to an architect role, this is even worse. In an architect role, you will have to know about all those other domains, right? Because you are going to be the one being asked about, like, how is your backend going to play with the frontend and DevOps and blah, blah, blah. So what's the alternative then, right? Many would say that, are you talking about a jack of all trades and a master of none? This is a very common perception of full stack engineers. And no, this is not what I'm talking about. The real full stack engineer, from my perspective, would be still an expert in one focus field of their choice. They wouldn't be afraid of the challenges in the adjacent ones. And most importantly, they will be self-sufficient with cross-cutting tasks covering more than one domain on an acceptable level of quality. And I would also say that it may even be an outstanding level of quality if they are, during the process of working with those adjacent domains, they are reviewed and maybe a bit coached by experts in those domains. So that's not blocking experts with the tasks and with the implementation of those tasks in those domains. This is just like, I don't know, sitting for half an hour, giving some overview of what would be a better solution and so on. So this is really much, much cheaper in terms of the dependency resolution. So you may have already guessed what I'm talking about, or whom I'm talking about. This would be a T-shaped engineer, a concept that was famously first introduced by David Guest in 1991, according to the Wikipedia. So let's take its word on it. And this is the kind of engineer that, according to Agile, the cross-functional teams consist of. Also, there are many more names for the T-shaped engineers, but let's not read them out. Let's look at the examples. So here are our beautiful T-shaped people. They have front-end and back-end areas as their primary areas of focus, and they also have spent some time learning adjacent areas. So back-end, DevOps, UX design, front-end, whatever it may be. And what differs them essentially from only back-end and front-end engineers is what I like to call T-top skills. I do hope to have coined the term with this, but the history will tell. But yeah, you may still have a question, but wait, Anton, what if these folks had spent the same amount of time they spent on learning backend DevOps and so on and so forth, all those T-top skills? What if they had spent the same amount of time learning their primary areas of focus? They would have been already super highly paid engineers, right? Maybe industry experts and so on. To which I would say, maybe. We cannot completely discard that possibility. However, I consider this unlikely, and here's why. Yes, so every skill has a learning curve to it, as we know. And according to the common theory of the learning curves, basically of their shapes, they have three distinct phases. which are, or how I like to call them, the hard start, where you are building the foundation of the new skill. You are getting familiar with the terms, the main principles. This is not a very productive time because you cannot really output anything during that time normally. But the good news is it's short, relatively. Then you get into the highly productive phase, which is a rapid improvement phase. And in this rapid improvement phase, the ROI of your efforts is very high. So you are basically storming through the knowledge about the skill. You're building the body of the skill. You're connecting the majority of the dots, and you're reaching proficiency. So that dot is this is the point where the proficiency is reached. So not the high-level expertise, but still proficiency. You know your way in this domain. And then you go into this what I like to call the slow perfectioning phase, where you continue working in this domain, but you seldomly get new stuff to learn from in this domain because you just know almost it all. And this is the increasing trend. So at some point you plateau in terms of the skill development. Why? Because you either just don't get the new cases to learn from, or you get the new cases to learn from at the same pace that you are forgetting the old stuff. So you plateau, and arguably your primary skill goal should be before that. So you reach some point that is nearing the plateau but not yet there, because you don't want to spend your effort with no output. And you switch focus for a bit to the T-top skills, which arguably shouldn't go beyond this point. Why so? Because we don't want to spend too much effort with little outcome. We would rather go and spend this same amount of effort, just a visual comparison of the same amount of effort and how much skill uplift we could get on something else, where we can really get the same high ROI progress. But that's not only the ROI why it's cool to focus on T-top skills rather than trying to dig further and further into the primary area of focus. But that's the cool stuff that being the full stack, so having those T-top skills brings. And that starts with self-sufficiency. Self-sufficiency on the cross-cutting tasks, which inherently means bigger impact potential. Managers love full stack guys because of this, because their work stream is so much easier to manage. They have so much fewer blocking dependencies, and moreover, there are tasks that are tailored to be done by one person. Because you need something fast on an acceptable level of quality, you need something fast in production, and the fastest way to do it is to put someone in the flow, I don't know, guard them from distractions, and then you get the task as the output. Yes, the default way to do things is in the team because of many, many, many considerations which we are not going to go into, but some tasks are like that. And having a person who can do this is a very big opportunity. Now, the full stack people have more understanding of the bigger picture, and this is why the teams love them, because they bridge those gaps of understanding between the domains, right? So they know exactly why frontend needs the backend to do this thing that way, and vice versa, and also how the backend will run on different infrastructures and why we need to build the backend this way or another, one way or another. So they do bridge those understanding gaps, and the teams value them for that because they act as like, I don't know, translators, if you will, at times. Now they have more options for steering their career at some point. Why so? Very easy. Let's imagine a backend engineer who learned a bit of DevOps, and at some point they understood that it is much more exciting to work on DevOps, actually. So it takes them like very short time to switch their focus. Yes, they switch from potentially a senior backend engineer to a junior DevOps engineer, but they may take this role even in their current job. And then, once they get some mid-level in the DevOps field, they can focus on the DevOps field fully. But what's cool about this transition is that they remain a full stack engineer. So they remain very valuable as a full stack engineer on all the accounts, right? So this is really cool. A byproduct of this is they have better looking CVs. So T-top skills do arguably always make CVs better because managers love this spectrum of opportunities that they can use a new hire for. So employers like these CVs better. And the last but by no means the least, a broader range of possibilities to grow into leadership or a software architect role is what full stack people also do have. So, with all this, still, let's get back to the initial question, why should everyone be full stack? And as I said, I do stand by this statement, and here's why. I think that every expert should be full stack at least a bit because of three things. First, if they want to be a true expert in their area, to make sure their focus area works well with the adjacent ones, they do need to understand how the adjacent areas work as well, at least high level, which would make them a little bit full stack, wouldn't it? Now, being a true expert is also largely being able to see the broader picture, which again doesn't go well without looking into the adjacent domains, which again in turn makes a person a bit full stack. And I'm not gonna get tired of mentioning this, sometimes there just isn't a team to help you out on a cross-cutting task. And that is where you either get stuck or full stack. So after all that, let's see if this rule, as many rules, has exceptions. And indeed it does have exceptions. The specialization is not good at all. There are cases, I tried to, let's say, summarize them in short. So, for instance, in case you wanna, it doesn't usually go easily like that. You want to make a breakthrough in some certain domain, and you do definitely make a breakthrough. Unfortunately, it doesn't work like this. However, if you want to increase your odds of actually making a breakthrough in a certain domain, specializing in this domain and investing considerable effort into kind of postponing this plateau section of the learning curve is a good idea, because then you know all the nitty-gritty details to potentially come up with an idea at some point that would make a breakthrough in this particular domain. Then this is also arguably not 100% true, but when you are an expert in a particular domain and know all those nitty-gritty details, it's good for teaching others this domain, because there are no questions that someone would ask that you wouldn't be able to answer. Obviously, let's not gatekeep there. You can teach others any domain, not being a fully like high-level, full-blown expert in this domain. But still, if you are, it's helpful. And again, if you know all those nitty-gritty details, it's good for the science of the domain, whatever it may be. So you can theorize. You can, look at the internal principles that would be hidden unless you know all the tiny details. So that is helpful for science. But isn't the biggest part of fun of being a software engineer coming from the fact of how fast and how big an impact you can make? And as a full stack, I answer yes to this, obviously. I bet on direct impact, here now, quickly. And that is about all I have to say on the topic today. Let's quickly recap. So first of all, a full stack engineer is not a jack of all trades and a master of none. It is a T-shaped specialist. Then T-top skills, as we saw from the learning curves, are cheaper to get than exceptional expertise in a narrow field. T-top skills give you better odds to make a big impact because of fewer blocking dependencies and so on and so forth. And even if you aim for becoming an expert in a narrow field, you'll have to eventually be full stack at least a bit. So why wait? Other areas are indeed fun too. And with that, Thank you very much for your attention, and ask all your questions. And please argue with me if you feel like.
Okay, thank you. So, Anton,
Yes.
let's say I have been a backend developer the whole my life,
Yes.
okay? And now you're saying that I have to get creative to become, let's say, a front end, or at least understand quite a huge amount of the front end, yes?
Yes.
Can I be both good in both places, or I will be both bad in both places?
This question is spot on. First of all, second of all, define good, right? So, as we are aiming for impact, then good, let's say good enough, as I would understand it, would be proficient. And this is totally possible because of this high ROI on the efforts in the rapid improvement phase of the learning curve of those skills. So you won't need to spend so much time to learn all those, so learn enough about the new fields to be considered a full stack. So for instance, you know very well, you know the backend field, and then you would spend, I don't know, some months maybe to get more or less familiar and confident in the front-end field, and then maybe some more months to get proficient. But that's it. So you don't need to spend your entire, I don't know, youth learning front-end again. So like the same 10 years. No, by no means. So I think you're going to be still good at backend and good enough at front-end or DevOps. And that is the good combination, the sweet spot that I'm talking about.
Okay, thank you very much. So I will not stuck in that learning curve at the first hard situation, right?
No, you're not going to get stuck at the hot start. Usually,
okay.
we have means to go through this phase available in the internet.
Okay, good. Do we have questions? Okay, we have a question by John Paul. That's a little bit, maybe we have answered this question, but I will still ask.
Sure.
I tried to do both front end and back end, but ends up doing one mostly. What does that mean?
This is interesting. This means that the influx of the work stream that you have only has one type of tasks. This is very typical, I would say, especially in the companies when people tend to assign tasks to engineers who can do that best, let's say, right? So not going for good enough, but again, like, okay, this person is the best front-end engineer, let's give them all front-end tasks, which isn't a very healthy practice from my perspective. But anyway, so I think what you can do, John, right? In this case, what I would suggest that you leverage the knowledge in the other field. So, for instance, if you are stuck, a bad word, but still, if you've been doing only front end for 6 months, then start asking increasingly more and more about getting backend tasks. Or maybe you want to learn also a bit more about DevOps, so you can go complete some tutorials and start asking for tiny DevOps tasks as well. So just try to change this trend, not to get your other part of skills rusty.
Okay, thank you. We have Ramuna's question. That is, let's say you're building a house, right?
Yes.
Would you say that electrician can build your full house?
This is a very, very good analogy. I would say yes. And there are conditions, obviously. However, there are critical things like, I don't know, like electricity or medicine, meaning like, I don't know, emergency medicine that you really would like an expert to do for you. However, there are so many more things beyond this critical tasks that this analogy, being very good, still does not represent the entire situation. However, In the situation of a house, I would say that probably one of the most critical parts is exactly the electricity. So if an electrician can build a foundation, can put up the walls and so on and so forth, the risks of failing really, really big time there are a little lower than they would be if, let's say, a plumber would be doing the electricity for your house. So, yeah. In case of an electrician, I would say yes. In case of a plumber, I would say yes, but please get an electrician to do the electricity.
Okay. John has asked one more question. How efficient can one learn to be a full stack? As in, how do you learn to start that?
This is an amazing question. I think the first shift is really just a shift of your mind, that you just say, okay, I am not really afraid of new stuff coming my way. So if I don't know something, I'm not going to say, okay, let's ask DevOps to do it, or let's ask frontend to do it, or backend, whatever. I am going to try to tackle it myself. I'm going to go look up some information about it on the internet, and we'll try. And then from trying, you actually remove this impediment. And after this, there are lots and lots and lots of possibilities to learn virtually anything. You may have to pay a little bit for the best courses out there. But yeah, I mean, that's definitely money well invested. So there are edtech resources to help you out with this. So whenever you get your mind to shift from like, no, that's not my area, to, oh, interesting, that's not my area, then you're good to start.
Okay, do we have more questions?
Someone is waving over there.
Good.
That's a smart solution to wave.
Very good, actually, solution,
spotlight.
because I don't see that. I don't see you guys.
Okay, sorry. Do you think like many people prepare to stay like in one field, maybe because it's just easier?
Oh, another very good question. Thank you very much for it. I do think so. This may seem to be easier, but exactly because of this tiny little mind switch that they haven't just yet achieved, which is really unfortunate because looking at the learning curve, it is not easier. But there is this psychological thing of maintaining the status quo being felt as an easier thing to do, rather than changing the status quo to something somewhat, let's say, unknown, right? So I do agree with you. That is because they want to maintain the status quo likely, and it feels that it's easier for them, whereas I would disagree that it is.
Thank you. Do we have more questions? Yeah.
I'm wondering, how do you define full stack exactly? Like maybe 1.5 decade ago when it started, it was being able to do anything. And that gets to less and less feasible nowadays. So how do you look at that?
Thank you for this question. I have two ways to look at this. One of my former bosses used to say, I mean, backend, frontend, DevOps, whatever, you're an engineer. Go figure. And whereas it may be a risky practice to apply just bluntly, still, this is I think, a rather audacious way to look at it, right? So that's one perspective. Another perspective is that, to be completely honest, I think reaching proficiency in a field nowadays is actually easier than it used to be. So yes, there are many more tools to learn and many more tools to, let's say, keep up with. That's arguably even the harder part. However, still, there are so many resources to do that staying in this rapid improvement phase is arguably easier today than it used to be when we didn't have resources. We only had books like Turbo Pascal books, or was it Bjorn Strauss, right? So that kind of books which were unmanageable to read, and they were the only source. So yeah, that's my answer. I hope that answers your question.
Does it answer your question? Okay.
Thank
Do
you.
we have more questions? No? Okay, so thank you for this encouragement to go a little bit further. Yeah, so let's give a round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You're a great audience. Super good questions. Thank you.